Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm going to take you on a little tour of the wiring that we did in the van. I did not intentionally make a video showing me doing all the wiring because it has been a lengthy process. It's taken me well over a month just working on weekends to get the wiring done. Again, why? Because I'm figuring it out as I do it. I've never done this before. I'm not super confident with electrical things, and then especially trying to wrap my head around early on about the difference between the 12 volt and the 120 volt and how they're totally separate systems. At least for what we have, they're not integrated at all. But it did take a while, and it would have been a really boring video, showing me running wire, I guess. And besides, every build for wire is going to be totally different depending on what your needs are. And the hardest thing maybe about wiring is really figuring out what your needs are going to be. How many outlets do I need? How many 12 volt ports do I need? And where to place them so that they work properly. And I'll show you what I'm talking about when we get into it here. So yeah, we're just going to kind of take you on a little tour of the wiring and show you how I routed it, what we thought our needs might be, and why we put certain outlets where we put them. So let's go ahead and start the tour. So our tour starts with our distribution panel that we got from Explorist.life. Here's our circuit breakers. And again, we'll start with the 120. So we have our 30 amp, and we've got two 20s and two 15s. You see I have them labeled. FP is for fireplace, and AC, which is not being used right now, is going to be in the future for our air conditioning. That's another thing to really think about also, is what are the potential future needs. So let me take off our lid here of the wheel well covers. Should have done this before. And there's the back of the distribution panel in the wheel well. All the wiring for the 120 volt. The white cable, white wiring, heading up, going towards the back, up and over. 4 outlets that are right there. There's one of the outlets, which is on the outside of the van. There's the second one, and then hanging right there, not hooked up yet, is another outlet. Also, we have, here's my first wall panel with insulation, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. So why do we have an outlet back here along with 12 volt? And why are we going to have an outlet back here also with 12 volt? Simply because right here on the back, we're going to have a cooler refrigerator right here and a cooler refrigerator right here. We're going to have 2 of them. The 120 volt, obviously, is when we're parked at a campsite, we can keep the fridges plugged into the 120, and when we're on the road, we can have them plugged into the 12 volt because they run on both 120 and 12 volt. So that's why we have outlets back here for that purpose. Right behind the sliding door, you can see right there, we're going to have another outlet. There it is right there. Also, with another, let's see if I can get it out of here, another 12 volt with all sorts of different stuff, with a voltage meter, a cigarette lighter, a USB, and then there's the switch. Every single 12 volt that we have back here is switched, and I will talk about that, why we did that also. The outlet for back here is going to be for the fireplace. We're going to have an electric fireplace right there that will be the main source of heat if we happen to find ourselves camping in a colder environment. Obviously, that will run off of 120, which is why we have that outlet there. So yeah, that's where the fireplace is going to be, and that's going to be an interesting install when I get around to that. The last outlet that we have is right here by the toilet. If you saw the toilet install video, you know that the toilet can run off of, it's got a little computer fan in order to keep air circulating in there. It can run off 120 or 12 volt as well. I've got my little checker in there because I was making sure the power was working, and it's totally working earlier. So that's why we have an outlet right there. And as well, we have another 12 volt switched right here to run it while we're on the road. Finishing up with the 120, here is the line for the AC. So again, it's running down that way, down into the wheel well box, into the distribution panel. Again, this is for future use because we don't have AC installed yet, obviously. We just have our soundproofing material. That will be for the future when we finally get an AC unit to put on the rooftop. So all the red and black wires you see are all 12 volt. And the 12 volt is quite a bit more complicated than the 120. Initially, I thought the 120 was going to be a little bit more difficult, but certainly running all the wires for the 12 volt took a long time. So starting behind the sliding door, again, we've got this 12 volt, and honestly, I'm not sure what we're going to use this for, but we're just going to have it down here for plugging in random stuff. Don't know why. We have a switch right here for our outside porch light. You can turn that on. It's hooked up directly to our house battery. Continuing on back here, as I pointed out before, we've got a 12 volt switch USB for phones and iPads and stuff on this side of the bed. We also have one for the other side of the bed. The switch for the puck lights, they're going to be going right here. We're going to have two basically above the bed. There's the wires for the puck lights. And as I mentioned before, the 12 volt down there for the fridge. We have another switch for more puck lights. We're going to have a total of just 4 puck lights around here. So there's that switch. And then, as I said, the one for the toilet right down there. So that is most of the 12 volt switches that we have. When it came to running the wire, holes had to be drilled. So for example, going up here, oh, and here's for expansion, the fan, max fan, is going to be going here at some point in the future, whenever we get that. So that'll be pre-wired and ready to go when we're ready to do that. Again, running wire, if you don't want it on the outside, when you put your walls up, the wires there would really interfere with putting the walls up. So we drilled holes, grommeted where we could in order to have as much of a flush experience with the walls when we put up the wall panels as we could, and did it pretty successful. Up here, we ran with clips along the outside for as clean of an install as we could get. Some areas, like over here behind the passenger, behind the sliding door, you could just run it right through the existing holes in the van, and I did that as much as I could. Half of this was figuring out where to run it, and the other half was actually running it using all the heat shrink. I mean, that took a lot of time. The heart of the 12 volt system is underneath the passenger seat. Maybe you saw that video that we did on the house battery install, and then the whole thing is run by this control panel right here, and maybe you can check out that video as well, the auxiliary switch panel install that we did. One thing I'm not overly happy with, and I really racked my brain on this, is each and every 12 volt wire runs right here behind the driver's seat and then goes underneath the pad and then goes into the base of the passenger seat, again to the auxiliary fuse block that's underneath the passenger seat. So I'm not overly happy with that. I need to get some sheeting. What do you call it? It's like a shroud material, like a wrap basically, to kind of hide that a little bit more. I really racked my brain on on how to route all of those wires, and I couldn't really figure out any other way to do it. I thought about, trying to go above the sliding door, on the roof. Anyway, it was just this is what I came up with. Maybe you came up with something different. Again, most of the wires are running right behind the toilet there and along that side of the wall. When they're not coming down from the ceiling for the puck lights, and then of course over here down to that 12 volt. So again, figure out how to route the wiring is maybe the most difficult thing. I keep saying most difficult thing. When you haven't never done anything like this before, it's all difficult. Figuring out where to route it. Are we going to have enough? I think my default was to have more rather than not enough. And for your build, maybe one outlet is fine. Maybe you don't need any outlets on the outside. Again, we cook. There's not going to be a kitchen in here. We cook on the outside, so I got to have room for my coffee maker and things like that. There's also going to have a microwave in here, so we have an outlet. The outlet for that is over there. But it's just thinking about what you might need in the future and planning for the future. Again, having having it pre-wired for air conditioning and for the max fan that's going to go up here at some point. Just kind of thinking about that. And what I did, I kind of drew it out. Okay, I want an outlet here. I want a 12 volt here. Are we going to need this on the road? Do we only need this when we're camped? Things like that. It's just kind of figuring that out. So again, and you'll hear me say this a lot, and you've heard me say this many times on after I've done something. If I had to do this again, I could probably do it in half the time. But figuring it out the first time is really kind of a struggle. It was also fun. Thinking about where it's all going to go. And then when you turn everything on and it works and lights are coming on and everything, it's like, yay, it's very, very exciting to do that. So I'll talk more about wiring as we continue on. The next stage right now is for the bed frame and for the wall panels and insulation. You can see the insulation behind me right here. And we'll talk about that in an upcoming episode as well. So I just kind of wanted to give a quick rundown of the wiring. And maybe you learn something from it. Maybe you're like, oh, that's a great idea. Or why did he do it that way? Anyway, it's what we came up with. And it all works. And hopefully it works out for when we actually start to use this thing. So we'll let you know in the future for sure. Thanks. And we'll see you next time. Bye.